Every human being suffers. Some suffer loudly. Others silently. Some suffer from loneliness. Others from anxiety, loss, regret, meaninglessness. And perhaps one of the most terrifying realizations in life is understanding that suffering cannot be completely escaped. No amount of success removes it forever. No relationship permanently protects us from it. No philosophy magically erases it. And yet, despite this truth, humans continue waking up every morning. Continue loving. Continue hoping. Continue surviving. Why? Why continue living in a world capable of so much pain? This question haunted one of the most important philosophers of the 20th century. Albert Camus. A man who stared directly into suffering and refused both despair and illusion. Tonight, we explore how Camus dealt with pain, how he confronted meaninglessness, and why he believed humans must continue living passionately, even inside an indifferent universe. Part 1: A Man Shaped by Suffering. Albert Camus did not develop his philosophy inside comfortable academic isolation. His life itself was marked by hardship. He was born in Algeria in 1913 into poverty. His father died during World War I when Camus was still an infant. His mother struggled financially. And from an early age, Camus experienced instability, fragility, and loss. Later in life, he developed tuberculosis, a disease that constantly reminded him of mortality. Even simple physical existence became uncertain. He lived through war, political violence, fascism, existential crisis, and social collapse. And because of this, Camus understood suffering not as abstract theory, but as lived reality. He saw directly how fragile human life truly is. How quickly dreams disappear. How suddenly death arrives. And perhaps this is why his philosophy feels so emotionally honest. Because Camus never pretended suffering was temporary, or avoidable, or fair. Part 2: The Absurd. At the center of Camus' philosophy exists one powerful idea: the absurd. Camus believed humans naturally search for meaning, order, purpose, justice, and explanation. Humans desperately want life to make sense. But according to Camus, the universe remains silent, cold, indifferent. And this collision creates absurdity. The absurd is born from the conflict between the human need for meaning and the universe's refusal to provide it. This realization can feel devastating, because humans instinctively believe suffering should have purpose. People ask, why is this happening to me? What does this pain mean? Is there a reason for suffering? But Camus believed reality offers no guaranteed answers. And for many people, this realization creates existential terror. Because without guaranteed meaning, life can begin feeling fragile and uncertain. Yet Camus did not run away from this truth. He confronted it directly. Part 3: The Question of Suicide. Camus once wrote, "There is only one truly serious philosophical problem: suicide." Why? Because if life lacks ultimate meaning, then humans must decide whether existence is still worth enduring. This question became central to his philosophy. Camus believed once a person fully confronts absurdity, 3 paths appear. The first path, physical suicide. To conclude suffering is too heavy. That life is meaningless. That existence is not worth continuing. Camus rejected this completely. To him, suicide meant surrender. It meant absurdity had defeated consciousness itself. The second path, illusion. Religious certainty. Blind optimism. False meaning systems created only to escape fear. Camus called this philosophical suicide. Because instead of honestly confronting reality, people escape into comforting explanations. Camus rejected this too. And then he proposed a third path. Revolt. Part 4. Revolt against despair. For Camus, the answer to suffering was not escape. It was conscious rebellion. To continue living despite pain. To continue loving despite loss. To continue creating despite meaninglessness. To consciously refuse despair. This became one of the most radical aspects of his philosophy. Camus believed humans should fully acknowledge suffering, death, uncertainty, and absurdity, without surrendering to hopelessness. Not because life becomes easy, but because conscious resistance itself creates dignity. And perhaps this is what makes Camus different from pure pessimists. He accepted suffering completely, yet still defended life passionately. To Camus, there was something heroic about continuing anyway. Maybe courage is not the absence of suffering. Maybe courage is continuing despite it. Part 5. Sisyphus. Camus expressed this idea through one of philosophy's most famous symbols. Sisyphus. In Greek mythology, Sisyphus is punished by the gods. Forced to endlessly push a massive boulder uphill, only for it to roll back down every single time. Forever. No final success. No completion. No reward. Only repetition. Only struggle. Camus saw modern human life inside this myth. Wake up. Work. Suffer. Repeat. Humans endlessly chase goals. Yet everything eventually disappears. Achievements fade. Bodies age. Relationships end. Death arrives. And despite all effort, the cycle continues. At first glance, Sisyphus seems tragic. But Camus reaches a shocking conclusion. He says, one must imagine Sisyphus happy. Why? Because Sisyphus becomes conscious. He no longer hopes for escape. He fully accepts reality. And through that acceptance, he becomes free. The gods can control his labor, but they cannot control his consciousness. And perhaps this is Camus' deepest message. Freedom begins when humans stop demanding the universe become meaningful, and instead choose how to confront existence themselves. Part 6. Suffering and Freedom. Most people spend their lives trying to avoid suffering completely. But Camus believed suffering is inseparable from being alive. To love someone means risking loss. To exist means facing mortality. To dream means risking disappointment. And because suffering cannot fully disappear, Camus believed humans must learn how to coexist with it consciously. This changes everything. Because instead of endlessly asking, how do I eliminate suffering? Camus asks, how do I live meaningfully despite suffering? This transforms pain from pure destruction into confrontation. And perhaps this explains why Camus valued lucidity so deeply. Lucidity means seeing reality clearly. Without illusion. Without denial. Without fantasy. To Camus, clarity itself becomes liberation. Because once humans stop expecting life to become perfect, they can finally begin experiencing existence honestly. Part 7. The Modern World and Existential Suffering. Camus feels strangely modern today. Because modern society is filled with distraction. People constantly escape discomfort through social media, entertainment, productivity, consumption, and noise. Silence became uncomfortable. Stillness became frightening. Why? Because silence forces confrontation with the self. And perhaps this is why so many people secretly feel emotionally exhausted. Modern life overstimulates the mind, while leaving deeper existential questions unanswered. People achieve success, yet still feel empty. They become connected digitally, yet remain lonely internally. They distract themselves endlessly, yet suffering quietly returns every night. Camus understood something important. Humans cannot permanently escape existential reality. Eventually, death, uncertainty, loneliness, and meaninglessness reappear. And maybe the real challenge of life is not avoiding these truths, but learning how to live consciously beside them. Part 8: The Beauty of Impermanence. Oddly enough, Camus' philosophy contains beauty. Because once humans accept impermanence, life becomes more emotionally intense. Moments become precious precisely because they disappear. A conversation, a sunset, a quiet night, laughter, love. These things matter because they are temporary. Camus believed humans should live passionately even while knowing life is fragile. Not despite mortality, but because of it. He loved nature, the sea, sunlight, friendship, art, and human experience itself. Even inside absurdity, Camus defended joy. Not naive happiness, but conscious appreciation. A rebellious love for existence despite its pain. And maybe this is why so many people connect emotionally to his philosophy. Because Camus does not promise salvation. He offers honesty. And strangely, honesty can feel liberating. Part 9: What Camus teaches about suffering. Camus teaches something deeply human. That suffering does not automatically destroy meaning. That pain does not erase dignity. That uncertainty does not make life worthless. Humans may never fully understand existence. The universe may never provide ultimate answers. And still, people can choose compassion, love, creativity, courage, and presence. This is Camus' rebellion. Not denial of suffering, but refusal to let suffering become total defeat. And perhaps this is why his philosophy continues resonating today. Because many people secretly struggle with anxiety, loneliness, emotional emptiness, existential confusion. Camus does not judge this suffering. He acknowledges it fully. Yet he still says, live, experience, continue. Not because life is easy, but because consciousness itself becomes meaningful through rebellion against despair. Part 10: The Courage to Continue. Perhaps Camus understood something most people eventually discover. Life will never become perfectly resolved. There will always be uncertainty, pain, loss, fragility. And maybe maturity begins when humans stop demanding permanent certainty from existence. Camus believed humans must create meaning through the way they live. Through awareness, integrity, passion, and conscious resistance against hopelessness. To him, the most human act was not escaping suffering, but facing it honestly without surrendering to nihilism. And maybe this is why Camus still matters. Because modern humanity desperately searches for meaning, while simultaneously fearing reality. Camus invites people to stop escaping, to stop pretending, to stand directly before existence, and continue living anyway. Maybe suffering is unavoidable. Maybe the universe remains silent. But perhaps There is something beautiful about a human being who continues loving life despite knowing all of this. Albert Camus never solved suffering. He accepted it, faced it, and transformed it into rebellion against despair itself. His philosophy reminds us: life does not need perfect meaning to be experienced deeply. Humans do not need certainty to continue living courageously. And perhaps the strongest people are not those who avoid suffering, but those who remain conscious and compassionate inside it. In the end, perhaps the true victory is not escaping suffering, but refusing to let suffering extinguish your ability to live.